What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's Professor Anime. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I am here to bring you a final review on Berserk 2016. So I just finished, got done watching episode 12 with some of my friends. And I also uploaded, before actually this review came out, that apparently Berserk 2016 is announced for a Season 2, which will actually air next year in the spring 2017 season. So this is very interesting. It's very interesting indeed because we're actually going to see more Berserk. And, you know, a lot of us were just like, hey, the episode list listed this for at least 25 to 26 episodes, and now it seems that, you know, they cut off and only gave us 12 episodes for this season. You know, what's going on here? And it turns out that apparently they are actually keeping this, the other half of the series of Berserk 2016 for next year to air in the spring season. So it's actually a good thing that, you know, they didn't, you know, completely fall off of the project, which is a very good thing indeed, because, you know, due to, you know, the start of Berserk, you know, a lot of negative feedback has been put on the series, and, you know, many of us, because of the negative feedback, that is what we thought was the cause as to, you know, why we won't be possibly seeing a continuation of this adaptation of Berserk. But it looks like we are in fact getting a continuation of Berserk. So this is very exciting indeed, because we're gonna be able to most likely see an adaptation, a continuing adaptation of the Millennium Falcon art when it comes to Berserk, which is going to be pretty awesome. And also, from what we saw at the end of this episode of Berserk, I gotta say right now, like, me, as a Berserk fan, I am fucking hyped. I am hyped. We see at the end of this episode of Berserk, the Berserker armor. That is fucking insane. Because the Berserker armor, if for anybody who doesn't know about the Berserker armor when it comes to Berserk, for you anime onlys out there, just, like, I say this every time when it comes to, like, you know, events in Berserk, but when Guts ends up, you know, coming across the Berserker armor, just be prepared for shit to go down. And I think a lot of you anime onlys are going to really enjoy the capabilities of what is to be expected in the next season of Berserk. So let's actually discuss the episode for a little bit. Alright, so what did I think about this episode of Berserk? As I stated before, in the past few episodes of Berserk, the episodes have been pretty hyped. They really have. It seems like they have gradually been getting better and better. And I will say that in this episode of Berserk, this was probably one of the better episodes that we have had of the adaptation. And it comes very close to last week's episode. Very close indeed. It's almost like they're on equal footing. Now, we, like, in the first 5 minutes of the episode, though, I will say that there were quite a few things that I laughed at. Not due to the CGI, but due to more so the animation on how certain scenes were played out. The first 5 minutes, me and my friends who watched the episode were actually laughing due to these certain events that ended up going down. But I'm not here to talk about that. I already stated my opinions on what I feel about Berserk right now. So you guys just want to hear the overall review. So let's get started with that. So I'm going to try to keep this review pretty brief when it comes to what went down in the episode, because I don't want to make this video longer than it needs to be. And also, you know, I want to give my overall thoughts on what I thought about the series of Berserk as well. So when it comes to this episode of Berserk, we finally see that the egg-shaped like creature, quote-unquote, that we have been seeing in the past few episodes of Berserk is actually a behemoth himself. Apparently he is actually what is going to summon Griffith to the human world in order to be reborn in the human world. Now, yes, Griffith was technically reborn already as Femto, but when it comes to the eclipse, remember that the eclipse takes place in a different world. The eclipse, the God Hand, the summoning grounds of the God Hand, that takes place in another realm, and that is where Griffith was technically reborn at. Now, when it comes to Griffith being reborn in the human world, he had to, basically, when it came down to the apostles and the pseudo-apostles, they had to play a larger role in the story in order to bring Griffith back, so that way he will be relevant in the human world in order to change the human world. And it looks like in this episode of Berserk, we see that Griffith has now returned. And I gotta say, when it came to Griffith, just coming out and looking at Guts, oh my god, I got so hyped. As a fan of Berserk, I got really hyped when I saw Griffith. Like, at the same time, while I felt animosity towards him, because I'm pretty sure most of us can agree that we do not like Griffith, especially what he did to Casca, what he did to the Band of the Hawk, what he did to Guts, his best friend, or what was his best friend. From us viewing what went down in the eclipse from the previous adaptations of Berserk and seeing it in the manga as well, we have a lot of animosity towards Griffith. And so does Guts. But when I saw Griffith, I was like, yo. One of the characters that I really liked in the beginning of Berserk is finally back. Of course, now I don't really like Griffith to do what I just said. He is a real asshole to Guts. But at the same time, I'm glad that Griffith is back, because we're most likely going to see, the story even get more chaotic than, it already has. And I really liked that moment in the episode. Well, technically this was one of the scenes that I had problems with that wasn't in the first 5 minutes, but it was actually in the halfway point of when we see Griffith's, being reborn. We see as soon as Griffith looks at Guts, Guts gets all mad and then starts to run at Griffith, but then he stops himself. Because then you see Casca behind him, and he realizes that, hey, Griffith is here, and I want to kill him. But at the same time, if I leave Casca is left unprotected. I'm the only one who can protect him. So he stops himself from actually leaping toward Griffith. And I thought that scene in the manga was done a whole lot better and actually, made sense. When it came to the way that they animated that scene in this episode, like, there were several scenes, as I stated before in the beginning of this review, that, there were several scenes in this episode that just looked very clunky and very weird. It wasn't the CGI, but it was more so on how the scenes were executed. I'm not sure if I'm the only one who noticed that, but definitely when it came to this scene, I noticed that the scene really didn't play out all that well compared to the manga. The Kushans end up arriving yet again in Guts' way, and they mean business, and we also see that the Bakiraka leader, Psylocke, is with them. And if you remember, Psylocke is actually one of the Bakiraka leaders that was in the previous adaptation of Berserk. Actually, I don't really think he was in the 1997 version, but I believe he was in the movies. In the movies, there was a scene that played out with Psylocke versus Guts at the time when Griffith was being tortured and Casca had to take over for the Band of the Hawk. But yes, Psylocke is there, and I personally think that Psylocke is a badass, and I'm glad to see him. There's actually a lot of people that actually arrived in this episode. Like, I literally thought that, they were skipping chapters of the manga, so that way I had to go back, but really they adapted pretty much everything to a T when it came to the manga. It's just that a lot of stuff seemed to just be going down in one specific episode, and there was a lot of reveals that went down in this episode as well. I mean, we have Salat showing up, we have Griffith showing up, and then we have Zodd. We have Zodd making an appearance, and I gotta say this, when it came to him coming out, busting through the wall, I was like, yo, is that Zodd? No way. And then I noticed that he had a horn missing. Now, let's talk about the horn really quick. Now, there was a scene in the manga revolving around Zodd and Griffith before actually this point came to be in the episode. And I was very surprised that the anime actually skipped over this, because this was very pivotal to, you know, what we were to expect of when Griffith ended up coming about, which is what we see in this episode, and it also had ties with Zodd as well. There's a scene that plays out in the manga before the, you know, the Tower of Conviction ends up falling, or, you know, probably even like 10 or so chapters before that. Like, there was this scene where we see Zodd just sitting around in this battleground, and there are soldiers, you know, killed off on the ground, and he's just pondering, you know, how exactly he is going to be able to come across a strong opponent like Guts. And then this is where we see Zodd actually start to drift off. He is falling asleep. He ends up falling asleep for a split second. And we have it to where he has this little dream that apparently was actually very realistic to him, to the point in which he saw Griffith, and Griffith technically ended up chopping off his horn, okay? Now, this was a very cool scene in the manga. If you haven't seen this scene, I suggest you end up going, you know, on, you know, looking it up online or something like that. I don't promote that shit, but, I mean, going back in your manga volumes of Berserk, if you have them, try to go to chapters 140 to chapters 150. I believe it is take place somewhere around those chapters. It was a very cool moment, and I was very surprised that the anime actually skipped over this, because, you know, as we see Zodd pop out in this scene in the episode, you know, busting out of the wall, you know, we are left with the assumption, why exactly does, you know, Zodd have only one horn now? What happened to his other horn? And also, what happened to his skin color? I mean, to be honest, there wasn't really that big of a deal when it came to the skin color of Zodd, but I never expected a blue beast to pop out of the walls and destroy everything in its path. I mean, Zodd was originally brown, so I was just very questionable as to why he turned blue, but whatever. Zodd ends up flying off with Griffith, and we also see that Nina and Luca are still alive, of course, and it seems like Nina is gonna get some further development with her character. She ends up going off with Joachim, or Joachim, however you pronounce his name. Apparently he's still alive, and you know, when it comes to those two, they have a very weird relationship, but it was actually revealed necessarily, I mean, they are technically very good for each other when it comes to pairings, because Nina is just a straight up coward that, you know, relies on other people in order to solve her problems. And then there's Joachim, which technically ratted Nina out just for his own safety, you know, to protect himself, his own life. So when it comes to both characters, Nina and Joachim, they both technically run away from their problems. And I think that these two characters, they can probably build off of each other and learn a few things. And it seems that Nina was also contemplating in her mind that she needs to start being a stronger person, not being too afraid, don't be so reliant on others, and, you know, just trust people a lot more, you know. So I'm glad that it seems like Nina is going to get some development, it seems, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like we're going to be seeing, you know, her in the future of Berserk. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but it seems like we won't be seeing more from Nina in the near future of Berserk, which I'm actually glad about. But if we do end up seeing her later on in the story, hopefully she is actually a better person and, you know, just has a totally different mindset, because from what I saw from her in these chapters of Berserk and also in these episodes of the Berserk 2016 adaptation, like, all I could hear in my mind was just a crying baby. And yes, I know people can bring up the argument as to say, whoa, what would you do in this situation? You couldn't do any better than her. It's anime. And I don't know about you, but while I would probably be scared shitless, I would probably at least try to do something about my problems instead of running away from them. And then we have it to where Guts and Casca also leave as well. So Zodd and Griffith end up leaving. They end up departing. Griffith is riding on Zodd's back, and Zodd ends up flying off somewhere to where we will probably see in the next episode of Berserk 2016, once that finally comes out, of course, for the next season. And then we also see to where Guts and Casca are leaving. It seems like they are following Zodd and Griffith. I mean, it seems like that, at least. Isidro is probably going to be following Guts as well, because I can't really see Isidro, you know, just, you know, suddenly, like, departing from the group. We have it to where Farnese, Serpico, and Ozon seem like they might end up joining the Black Swordsman, Guts, because it seems that Farnese is done with the order that she is in regarding the Holy See. She actually wants to follow the Black Swordsman, and I guess keep him, you know, an eye on him necessarily, and just figure out more about him and see how exactly, you know, how he became so strong, who exactly, you know, is he. You know, she just wants to ask him questions and learn more about him. And if she is still with the Holy See, she is restricted from going, you know, from actually following along the Black Swordsman. So if she abides to her own orders, then she will most likely be able to follow the Black Swordsman and figure out more about him as well. So we have it to where basically everybody in this episode was branching off. I mean, Nina and Joachim basically do their own thing. So a lot of people were actually disbanding in this episode. It was just an episode that was built a lot on reveals, build up for what's to be expected in the next season of Berserk, and departing, of course. So when it comes to my overall thoughts on what I thought about this episode, the episode was pretty good. The beginning was a little bit shaky. As I stated before, you know, some of the scenes just did not play out the way I hoped they were played out. But you know, it was just a good episode overall. It was a pretty good episode. When it comes to my overall feelings of this series of Berserk, of this adaptation at least of Berserk 2016, you know, it's a love-hate relationship. It really is. And I'm pretty sure that's a lot for most of us, you know, who are really big fans of Berserk. We have been waiting a long-ass time for another adaptation of Berserk to actually see, you know, the animation being continued, you know, in the series of Berserk. And I'm glad that it finally is. While I am glad that Berserk finally got an anime adaptation, a continuing anime adaptation, at the same time, I'm not going to ignore its flaws. It does have flaws. Some of the scenes don't make sense. The characters look expressionless due to the CGI. CGI entirely. I mean, I'm not really a big fan of CGI. There are some anime that are actually pretty good with CGI, but, you know, if the story and the characters are, you know, well-rounded, then I can overlook the CGI. Sometimes, though, I really couldn't overlook the fact in this adaptation of Berserk, you know, I couldn't overlook, you know, the CGI that was going in this adaptation. And You know, they kind of messed up the story in the beginning stages because I thought we would honestly get a full Black Swordsman arc that would actually lead up to events that will bring us to this point. And while the series has been doing really good so far, still, when it comes to anime-onlys at least, I'm pretty sure, you know, I just think they would have a better understanding of the story of Berserk if certain scenes were actually played out correctly and none of them were skipped. I mean, in the beginning of, you know, the Black Swordsman arc, actually, the beginning of the very first episode, we didn't even get an arc in episode 1 of Berserk. We just got little tidbits of the events that were in the Black Swordsman arc, but like literally like 5 to 6 volumes were skipped out of, you know, Guts' storyline. So I mean, yes, this anime adaptation was very shaky, but I stuck with it because I knew for a fact that it would get better over time if I just gave it a chance. If you give anime a chance, you know, you can actually start to see, you know, the qualities of what actually can make it good. Will you be able to overlook the flaws of that series? No. This anime adaptation of Berserk is somewhat of a faithful adaptation. It's somewhat of a faithful adaptation, you know, despite the fact that, you know, 5 to 6 volumes were skipped in the beginning stages of this anime. But, you know, at the same time, is it a good adaptation? That really is depending on how you view this series. Is it still an adaptation that, you know, many Berserk fans wanted? Still, it's subjective. Were you looking for a CGI anime? But is it a adaptation regardless of one of the best-selling manga of all time? Yes. Okay? And as a big fan of Berserk, I wanted to stick with this series and see it to the end, and hey, it looks like we're getting another season of Berserk, which is a very good thing. Now, if they can just try to slow down the pacing in some scenes and also, you know, try to make, I mean, it seems like they are including more 2D art in the series, so if they were to include more 2D art, that would be amazing. I doubt that they are actually going to change the second half at which they already animated, I believe, so I doubt that they would just skip over, you know, redoing. I doubt that they would redo, you know, the second half of Berserk because I'm pretty sure it's already animated, so it's most likely going to be in 3D still. But if they were to include more 2D art, you know, improve the CGI to a little bit if you're still going to use it, and also not skipping over events from the manga, then I think that the next season of Berserk 2016, which will air in 2017, will probably end up being a lot better. I really do think that. Now, as for my overall rating on what I think I am going to give this adaptation of Berserk, I think I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It's slightly above average, but that is me being biased as a Berserk fan. I am rating this higher than usual. So actually, if I wasn't really a Berserk fan, like if I wasn't that invested in the series, I would probably give this show maybe a 5 out of 10. Maybe a 4. But I'm being nice because I'm a Berserk fan and I actually was hyped on certain scenes that ended up going on in the series, and it did progressively get better for me. So at the moment, I'm giving this series a 6 out of 10, and let's hope that in the next season of Berserk 2017 is now going to be the new season of Berserk. You know, I really do hope that they improve on the stuff that us fans, you know, have been really questionable on. Hopefully they listen to our negative feedback. I mean, they can't really change everything that they have already done, but they can at least improve upon it before spring 2017 releases. So I really do hope that, you know, the next season of Berserk will be a whole lot better, and I think that I will end up rating it higher if it does in fact turn out better. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below on what you thought about this episode of Berserk, and also what did you think about the series as a whole. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Just let me know your overall thoughts. Of course, if you like this video, don't forget to drop a like on it. It always helps out the channel. And if you want to stick up to date to my future content on this channel, please hit that red subscribe button below, and you will never miss a video from me. That about does it for this video, guys. Thank you all for watching. The support on these Berserk videos just have been insane, and I really can't thank you enough for that, guys. So yeah, just wanted to say that. I'll catch you all next time. Peace.